Welcome to the Hoxworth Unfiltered Podcast, brought to you by Hoxworth Blood Center, University of Cincinnati. I'm Ashley Smith, and this is a crossover episode of Ashley Asks EMS featuring In the Know with Dr. O. I love the crossovers. Like, I love when you're watching a TV show and
those are the best ones.
They really are. Okay, so anyways, we're also joined by Jason Peng. Jason, thank you so much for being here with us. Jason's going to tell us all about the Prehospital transfusion program at his department. But first, Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background for the viewers that haven't met you yet.
Sure, yeah. So I am the Director of EMS at Miami Township Fire EMS, so I run the EMS division. I've been back there for about a year or so, but I actually started there in 1997 as a firefighter paramedic.
Wow.
I worked there full time until about 2012, and I went to grad school and became a nurse practitioner. I spent 11 years on air care flying. I still work clinically at the ER 4 to 5 times a month as a nurse practitioner. I spent about 12 to 14 years in the Navy, piloting labs. About a fourth of that active duty, the rest reserve. The other side time in the Marine Corps. So I've got kind of a mixed bag laid back down, but always doing something in medicine.
Yeah, I asked Jason when we first met, do you have any military experience? And I was hoping, but also expecting that you would say yes, because you find that a lot in your field, that a lot of people have some sort of military background. And it's going to come into play here when we talk about this program, because it really kind of dates back to the battlefield, which is very fascinating. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about pre-hospital blood transfusion, also known as PHT. So you may hear us say that. So now you know, you can impress your friends that you know what another acronym is. So pre-hospital blood transfusion is when EMS clinicians deliver whole blood or blood components to a patient who is bleeding severely, whether that's internally or externally, right at the scene of an injury or while en route to the hospital. So that's kind of the basic definition of that. Severe bleeding, by the way, is the leading cause of preventable death in trauma patients, including those involved in motor vehicle crashes, but with a prompt delivery of blood products. And by the way, we were also talking about this. Some of these numbers are still kind of being worked out, the data surrounding this, because it's so new. But some studies estimate that 37% of trauma patients with severe bleeding could be saved. So that's a high percentage. Every minute of delay increases the risk of death by 11%. And again, those numbers could fluctuate quite a bit, but it just kind of gives you a baseline. This practice, though, brings enormous benefits: improved patient outcomes, enhanced EMS capabilities, and faster progress toward reducing roadway fatalities, which of course is a common kind of practice with this. So far, Hoxworth has partnered with Let's Community Fire Department and Miami Township Fire EMS in Claremont County and Ripley Life Squad. More agencies are going to be coming, as Dr. O will talk about as well. That's kind of the wish here, the hope, just to, of course, save more lives in the end. In addition, Hoxworth supplies 19 air evac locations with pre-hospital blood. 2 of those bases receive whole blood, while 17 receive packed red cells and liquid plasma. So we kind of talked about a lot of things there. You know, I mentioned the packed red cells, the liquid plasma, whole blood. We talked all about this on Blood Banking 101 when we had you on last time. And we mentioned the fact that this wasn't happening yet, but you kind of gave us a little bit of a teaser and said, maybe they will soon. Of course, you knew. You were in the know. And now we're all in the know. So tell us a little bit about, why this was so important to you to bring here to the Hoxworth area and for Hoxworth to be involved in it.
Yeah, so when we start the conversation, a lot of times we do get confused because we talk about whole blood, then we talk about components later. And a lot of the excitement has really risen around whole blood. But given that, we've also know that the blood components themselves are very helpful and are saving lives. So there are logistical issues for whole blood. There are scarcity issues with whole blood. And so kind of the golden product that we have, our standard product, is going to be liquid plasma and component red cells. But whole blood will have both of those together. So hopefully I won't mix up the two too much. Blood products have been around for us, the components, really since the beginning of blood banking, which is for Hoxworth 1938, right? And that's, whole blood was actually produced first, and then we were able to go to component therapies after that. So the blood industry, let me start over again. The blood industry really started with whole blood, right, in the in 1938 or so. And as we were able to, the technology split into different components, we started just using the components instead of the whole blood. So when you give whole blood, you really want to try to match the whole blood of the recipient with the whole blood type of the donor with ABO. And we talked about ABO last time. And so you would really want, ideally, to give like a B recipient B whole blood.
Yeah.
There are incompatible components. You give the red cells or the plasma when you don't go strictly according to type. It's better to give a type that's not compatible for the plasma versus the red cells, because we really have to make sure the red cells are compatible. Otherwise, they'll get destroyed by the recipient and that can cause death. Typically, if you give incompatible plasma, we just know from the years that it's not typically as severe. As we went to component therapy, that really was the gold standard for years and years and years and decades. And now there's been big renewed interest in whole blood with the Gulf conflicts, with emergency and trauma surgeons in the field of action who would give whole blood because of scarcity and time issues. And so as they came back to the U.S. and different ERs and as trauma surgeons, they started requesting whole blood much more often in terms of blood centers. So it took us a little bit of time as blood centers to accommodate those requests. I know we started here at the University of Cincinnati producing whole blood in 2018. I arrived in 2017 late, and that was the first request I got from the trauma surgeons was, please, could you start giving us whole blood? And so we were able to provide that in July 2018. And it's been very useful ever since then. Cincinnati's been a real pioneer, actually, in terms of using whole blood in the trauma patients. Now we're 5 years later, 7 years later, and there's thought that we need to use blood more often or frequently host settings, especially pre-hospital. There was a study done in 2018 that was published in the journal, which really showed that pre-hospital transfusion of blood products can save lives, which is saving products. And it really, I think the thought process now was, gosh, that unit of blood, if it's transfused to a patient on the hospital, inpatient, who just is kind of needing an additional unit, versus that unit that could be given in the field, that unit in the field could be much more impactful and really save lives actively. But it's a logistical question how to do that. And so these guys have figured out.
Yeah, so how have you figured this out? Obviously, people know that we've got coolers of blood. So do you have a cooler on these ambulances? How are you transporting it? And it also comes down to training. You're mentioning, obviously, these people have to know how to transfuse blood. So just kind of talk to us about that process and how you're now able to actually carry it.
So I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I worked for Air Care for 11 years. So I honestly took their policy, their equipment, what they would be, what I was used to, and just implemented it in Miami Township down to the ABB certified refrigerator that we store the blood products in, to the coolers that we use, to the blood handler that we use. All the policies and procedures to that found good and starting to develop on Hoxworth. So that was the starting point, just getting the upfront logistic equipment. But as far as the training, I really think paramedics have always been kind of treat hemorrhagic shock. We have how to identify hemorrhagic shock. We train to minimize crystal blood infusions to common patients. Years ago, we were giving everybody 2 liters of crystal blood. Now we give them beyond and trauma. Yeah, I think there's some evidence out that even crystal blood is harmful in trauma. Large volume, you could delete clotting factors. So it's actually harmful. Most paramedic services I know in Cincinnati aren't dialing patients in crystal blood. They're just not getting product and just getting to the hospital as soon as possible. So for us in the suburbs, where our closest level of trauma center is downtown Cincinnati, those patients that are in hemorrhagic shock from trauma, they need to go there. And having blood on the ambulance or getting blood to our ambulance gives us that brief that we can kind of patch that gap. And get them to the level 1 trauma center. They're still alive, potentially, where before we were just trying to be our best. Air Care is a great resource in the area, but there are times I flew, we couldn't fly because of weather, or because of other issues, and having DI available is great. It's a great resource.
we talked about traffic incidents, but there's other uses. Talk to me about other situations where you may use this pre-hospital transfusion.
Certainly, in Miami Township, we're a suburban community, pretty low crime. So we actually looked at statistics, and we think we're going to use our blood more for medical patients, honestly, than trauma. So we do have a population of that would see GI bleeds, acute upper GI bleeds, and hemorrhagic shock. We have the postpartum hemorrhage patients that can have hemorrhagic shock. And so those patients we would transport to more of a local hospital like Bethesda North, but they still would use it from created blood products. So there's a whole range of patients that have hemorrhagic shock, not necessarily infected. But those would be the GI bleeds from postpartum hemorrhage that we would see most often.
You're holding a blood drive, which we love because we were talking about the supply and demand. So now, if you are able to use this blood pre-hospital, obviously you got to replenish it. So why was it important to you guys to also hold a blood drive?
I think it's integrity. I mean, if we're using blood products that, there's a supply and demand. I kid around with the fire department. I tell the guys, if we're getting blood, you're getting blood.
Yeah.
So it's not an option. You're just doing it. And so we're going to plan on trying to do quarterly blood drives. That's our plan. We have buy-in from the police department. Very excited because they're at risk.
Yeah.
If they get shot, we have that blood for them.
Right.
Even the administrative staff, everybody in Miami Township is wanting to give blood. We haven't even opened it up to our community yet because we have so many people inside our organization that want to give blood. We don't want to turn people away. So it's just important. It's a scarce resource. It's a valuable resource. And if we're going to be giving it, we need to supply.
Yeah. Can't be manufactured. So saline can be manufactured, but blood you can't. So we need it to come from
it's
donors.
such a community resource, and that's what you guys are, right? So it just fits right along with what you're doing. And the blood collected here serves the community, and it's just this kind of great support system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love that. Talk to me about we mentioned it. You guys have both really mentioned the type of blood that you're going to be keeping. Obviously, we know O negative is a universal donor, but that's not necessarily what's going to be on in a perfect world it would be, right?
Sure.
But talk to me about what kind of components you're going to have.
Yeah, it's a great question. We get questions from the community about that. So we carry O positive blood cells. And so for the adult male or even pediatric, for males, it's not an issue. The only issue we run into are females of childbearing age after our age measurement. But, there's a window of opportunity for them to get little gamma, and then it's not really an issue. So we just make sure that our facilities that we transport to know that they're getting O positive blood cells, that's the childbearing female, then they have a window of opportunity to get little gamma. And at the end of the day, it's about saving lives.
Absolutely.
As far as the plasma, Dr. already talked about, if you have the plasma, it's really not an issue. And so we carry a variety of A positive, A negative plasma. And so that's kind of where we're at as far as.
And saving a life, which is really fascinating. I also wanted to talk about what this means to you guys. I mean, you're one of the first, not only here in the area, but really in the country that's doing. I mean, that's a big deal. So. Have you explained to your staff how big of a deal this is? Do they understand? What's it like?
Everyone's just excited to be able to do something that we've always wanted to do that's super important. There's a lot of things in emergency medicine that we do, like medications we carry that we wonder, does that really work? Does that really impact patient care? And we know that blood does. We've always known that blood does.
Yeah.
And it's just being able to have the logistics to store properly, to roll it out properly, and efficiently. Everyone is just super excited to be able to provide that level of care. And so the paramedics are all super pumped.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, for your time. And Dr. O, as always, this has been fantastic. So that's it for today's episode of Hoxworth Unfiltered. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, there's nothing more powerful than sharing life through blood donation. And now that Hoxworth is supplying local EMS crews with blood for the very first time, your donation could save a life before a patient even reaches the hospital. If you learned something new today, share this episode with a friend, leave us a review, or hit that follow button so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay curious, save lives, and keep it unfiltered.